So we'll be looking at what is called market structures. To identify what a market is important for you as an economist. So there are 4 key types of market structures that we have. We have what is called the perfectly competitive market, a monopoly. We also have a monopolist, as well as the oligopoly. So I'm going to dominate on understanding the characteristics of each of these markets. By the time I'm done, I'll need you to answer a few questions that I'll ask you. Market structure has both a theoretical part and a calculation part. So let me start with the theoretical part of the market structures. So like I've said, there are 4 main market structures that you need to know. To start with, economic market structures can be grouped into 4 categories. There's the perfect competition, monopolistic, oligopoly, and monopoly. Now the categories differ because they have different characteristics imbued in them. They have different characteristics that are imbued in them. So we'll start looking at each of them in detail, one by one. So we'll go to what is called a perfectly competitive market. A perfectly competitive market. So when you're dealing with a perfectly competitive market, I usually give the example of just upon the goods that we find at an agro show. Those goods fall in what is called a perfectly competitive market. Now, market structures, for your own information, refers to how different industries are classified and differentiated based on, number 1, their degree and nature of competition for their services. Number 2, their purchasing power. Number 3, the number of goods and the number of firms involved in this market. So you do well to really understand the characteristics. So the perfectly competitive market, number 1, has many buyers and sellers. This means in this market structure, these many buyers and sellers that dominate the market have what is called perfect information. They know and quite aware of the prices prevailing for what commodity at what price. Okay, so people are well informed. The goods are homogeneous in this market structure, meaning they are identical, they are the same. So let me scroll down to a table that you could want to be interested in that will relate one market structure to the other. So perfect competition, monopoly, monopolistic, and oligopoly. So you'll be asked by the examiner to explain the characteristics of the market structures. So I said number 1, there are many firms that are in this market structure. They have easy entry and exit in the market. You can enter and leave the market whenever you feel like. There is no product differentiation, meaning the goods here are what? Identical. They are the same. We use the term homogeneous. The curve is horizontal in nature. This means they are price takers. So if you're going to join a perfectly competitive market and you're selling onion, some of you are into agricultural products, you will sell onion based on the prevailing market that is there. You know, when it's raining, just prior rainy season, there's abundance of what? Tomato. So if you choose to sell your basket higher than the normal package, people will not buy from you. And the average size of firms in this market structure is relatively small. Demand is very elastic, meaning demand is what? Sensitive. When you choose to price higher, people will switch. Because if you're going to sell, we've gone to a market, you see how people are what? They can take their tomatoes. If you're higher than this one and this one look bigger, people are highly sensitive. They easily switch. Is because of what? Perfect information. They know exactly how much a tomato of this size should cost. They make what are called normal profits and economic profits in the long run. So what happens in a perfectly competitive market when people hear the new product that is coming, a few of them will dominate the market. Eventually, everyone would want to come into the market, for instance, selling handbags until they saturate the market to an extent that the firm will reach what is called a shutdown rule. At that point, individuals will be making economic profits, minimal profits, where they are breaking even. Eventually, they make what are called economic losses. I'll show you the graphical implications of that. Then there is little or no government intervention in the perfectly competitive market. The invisible hand of demand and supply will predetermine what? Equilibrium. In this market structure, you and me are price takers when we go into that market. We have no power in determining what the price should be. Examples that prevail are agricultural products like corn, wheat, apples, tomatoes. The best example or best correct opposite of this market structure is what we call a monopoly. In your mind, what should come in is a utility company like Zesco. In this market structure, there is one firm that dominates the market. Entry here is very difficult or protected. There are huge barriers to entry because of government interventions that they put in. Franchise rights, the legal and the cost implications. Zesco is in your mind. You can't open another utility company without so much sanctions. The good must be unique. There must be no substitutes that are close for you to be a monopoly. So you can't be a monopoly as Zambia Sugar when there's Kafue or Kasama Sugar. The demand curve is downward sloping. So demand is very inelastic. Consumers will just complain even when Zesco tariffs go up, but they'll still buy because they have no close substitutes. The average size of these firms is large and demand is inelastic, and they make what are called abnormal profits in the short run. This kind of market structure is heavily regulated by government, if not often cases nationalized. They have high pricing power. They're price setters. They determine how much. By the way, we are aware that prices of Zesco will go up anytime soon. Examples are electric, gas, utility, and transit companies. We also go to what is called a monopolistic market structure. What should come into your mind are restaurants, food, retail stores, Trade Kings, and Unilever, these competing differentiated markets. So here there are many buyers and sellers. Freedom of entry and exit here exists. There's what we call product differentiation. The goods here attempt to be heterogeneous because they are differentiated. You have Colgate, you have Aqua Fresh, all of them are producing Colgate. They're producing toothpaste, but they are differentiated in their branding. There's huge branding that happens there. And to that effect, firms will have little or some control to the pricing because of the packaging attractiveness of the product. The demand curve is downward sloping and quite elastic. There are many small firms to medium scale firms. This is where most of the SMEs fall in, and demand is quite elastic. They make normal profit and there's minimum government intervention. They have little to minimum pricing power, and examples like I mentioned are restaurants, food, and retail stores. When we go to oligopoly, what should come into your mind are cartels. These cartels predominantly will fall into the energy, the TV, automobile, cell phone sectors. or the OPEC countries, they've merged together to form what is called a cartel. In this cartel, there is a market leader. There's what we call interdependence of decisions. So firms will join to form a cartel at the kink where decisions are interdependent. So this means that firms that will merge together will decide how much to produce to whom, in what quantities, at what time. So the goods that are produced here in nature are both highly identical and highly differentiated. They have a downward sloping, elastic, inelastic, and a kink demand curve. A few large firms will form and join, and demand here is both elastic and inelastic. They will make what we call normal and abnormal and economic profits in the short and long run. They are unregulated. So if I'm going to show you the graphical pictures of each of these ones here, I'll start with the perfect competition. We say the demand curve is horizontal. The price is the same as the marginal revenue. It's the same as the AR. So what happens in the short run? They'll make what we call normal profits. So we have what we call the normal profits. We draw the average total cost, then the marginal cost cuts just half of the average total cost. Then the price, which is called the marginal revenue. Where marginal revenue and marginal cost meet, we draw a line there. This profit is called our economic or normal profit. So when the marginal cost reaches the tip, when it touches the marginal revenue, we call this economic profit. This is supposed to be the normal profit, economic profit, but with the marginal cost, when the costs are more than your revenues, you make what is called the economic losses. In an economics paper, always endeavor so, can you remember? There are four main market structures that we know. What are they? Number one, Kileshe, Chiwele, and Gillian. What are the four market structures that we have?
Perfect competition.
Perfect competition, yes. Number two. So for perfect competition, the three of you, give me any four characteristics. Number one.
Homogeneous goods.
Homogeneous goods. What does it mean that goods are homogeneous?
The same, basically.
Yeah, the same, basically, yeah. Next. What other characteristics do we have?
They're small in size.
The what?
Small in size.
Yeah, small in size, yes.
Easy entry and exit, right?
Entry and exit, correct.
No government interference.
There is no government interference. Who determines the price and quantity? The price and quantity demanded, the invisible hand or forces of demand and supply. What are the characteristics? Elasticity. What about the elasticity?
Very elastic.
It's very elastic. Good. How about the mobility of the factors of production? There's free mobility of the factors of production. The pricing. What can you tell me about the pricing? They're price takers. They take the price that is there. Okay. The demand function, what can you tell me about the demand function? We said it is what? It is horizontal.
Horizontal.
Price is the same as the what? Average revenue, which is the same as the what?
I see.
Marginal revenue. So in the short run, they make a profit called what? A normal profit. So our average revenue or marginal revenue is here. Then our average total cost is here. Then what cuts into half? The margin what? The marginal cost. When is profit maximized? When marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost. That's when profit is maximized. Marginal revenue is equal to the marginal cost. So where they meet here, marginal revenue and marginal cost here, we draw a line. Draw a line. So this is called the normal profit. The next market that we looked at was what? Monopoly. Tell me the 5 characteristics of a monopoly. I talked about 10, but just give me any 5.
It's an elastic.
It's not Makungu, Kalonje, and Stewart and Sola.
It's an elastic.
Yes, it's an elastic. Good. So now elastic number 1, number 2.
It's highly regulated.
It's highly regulated, correct? Number 3.
Firms have high pricing power, not price. Yeah.
Yes, they have high, they are price setters. In short, they have pricing power. By elastic, it means what? Demand looks like this. Demand is down sloping. Okay. So we have these 2 lines there. Our average revenue is here, and our marginal revenue is here. The down sloping. So we have our average total cost, which is keeping like this, and the marginal what? Cost, which cuts half of this. So where they cut marginal cost, where it means the marginal cost, where it means the marginal revenue here. This is where we maximize the profit. So they make what we call abnormal profits. They make what we call abnormal profits in the short run. Okay. So what else did we say about monopoly?
There are single sellers. No.
One major single seller, correct? What else? Information is imperfect. We don't know what happens.
High in buyers.
Barriers to entry, correct? Before Dangote came through, there was a monopoly of cement because there was imperfect information. We did not know. These people claimed there were high production costs associated with the operation costs, and that's why cement was high. And Dangote came through and rubbished everything. Said, no, these people are stealing from you. And so the monopoly that was being formed was compromised. So we talked about imperfect information. What else? These kinds of microstructures have huge capital investments, and as such, there are huge barriers to entry. Examples are utility companies like gas, electric, Automobiles. Is it? What other characteristics did we talk about? Okay. So this is a graph of a monopoly. Okay. There's no competition. There are no close substitutes. The firm is a price setter, and they make economic profit because price is set in the elastic region, and the effective allocation is achieved. So monopolistic, I talked also about Trade Kings and Unilever. They have the following graphical implications. We talked about an oligopoly, which has a king. Firms will merge together. There are two demand equations. So at some point it is elastic, some points it is inelastic. So these ones here are controlled by a handful of firms, which are called a clique or a cartel. So this firm will decide how much to be produced to whom at different price zones. They exercise what is called price discrimination. Price discrimination is simply the art of charging different prices at different pricing levels. So examples under perfectly competitive markets look like this. So the calculation part, I'm going to look at it later on. So I just want you to appreciate the theoretical aspect of it. So I'll now go to another important theory which we looked at last time, which was demand and supply. I said demand function is always downsloping, supply is always upsloping. So supply has a positive slope. Dealing with supply, the price is equal to what? A plus bx. Because the B is a slope. A plus bx or bq. And demand is given by P is equal to A minus BQ. Now, this is just a recap of what we discussed in case you missed our class last week. I also sent the video. I just want to do a can you remember? So there are several factors that affect demand and several factors that affect supply. What are some of the factors that affect demand? Number one,
Availability, if I can remember.
yes,
No, I'm
availability.
wrong.
Yes. Okay. Income base.
Income, correct.
Quality,
Quality, correct.
The price of substitute goods.
Price of substitute goods, correct.
Weather.
The weather, correct.
And the price of a good.
Price of
Taste.
that particular,
What you prefer.
yes. What else?
Type of the good.
The type of the good. What types of goods did we talk about?
Different
Inferior,
good.
Inferior goods.
complementary,
So
Complementary goods.
great. Factors that affect demand. We talked about the taste and the preferences of the consumers, the type, the income of the people, the changes in prices of the related goods. The related goods we talked about are what? Goods like the consumer goods, goods like the substitute and complementary goods, goods like public and merit goods. We also talked about advertisement expenditure. It also affects the demand for your particular commodity. The more you advertise it, the more you are aware of it. The number of consumers in the market, the population is important. The higher the population, the higher the what? The demand for a particular good. We also talked about consumers' expectations with regards to future prices. I gave examples of what? Fuel. When you hear that fuel is about to go up, what will happen? People will buy in anticipation. Okay, they'll buy in anticipation. So that is what we talked about as the factors that affect what? Demand. We also talked about the factors that affect supply. Can somebody remember any factors that affect supply? Factors that affect supply. So we say
The state of technology.
the number of firms. If there are more firms in the market, there'll be a huge supply. The decrease in cost of production. When the cost of producing that commodity goes down, it means the business will have potency to supplying more. The investment capacity, if it's huge, then firms will join to supply. The profitability of alternative what? Products. So then also the related supply. If some supply is dependent on other related supply and it's available, then people will have the determination to do what? To produce, because the other related supply is a complement. The weather. The weather is also an important part that affects what? Supply. If the weather, the moment in the mining industry is bad, it's rainy, people will not produce manganese so much. The productivity of the workers, the technological improvements, all these affect what? They affect the ability to supply. We also talked about an important component, which was called elasticity. Elasticity of demand. What did you say? What was elasticity of demand? What is elasticity of demand? So elasticity of demand simply talks about your ability to elasticity of demand is simply a variation on the concept of demand, the percentage change in demand due to changes in prices. So under demand theory, after looking at the law that governs demand, to say people are more willing to purchasing a commodity that has a lower price or higher supply and vice versa. We looked at the concept of elasticity as being how sensitive people become to buying a particular commodity due to changes in what? In prices. If you hear that ShopRite bread is 19 kwacha and Pick and Pay bread is 16 kwacha, the people's ability to switch from ShopRite to Pick and Pay, that is called elasticity. So you and I are defined to be people with rational behaviors, that we are always intending to have more for less. So that attribute is called elasticity. Elasticity is a sensitivity that consumers have on demand due to changes in prices. So before I delve so much into elasticity, I want to remind you that we discussed the types of, we talked about 7 types of goods. We looked at number 1, substitute good. What is a substitute good? Substitute good is what? Like, these are goods that have the same usage. They're competing goods. We gave examples. What examples did we give of substitute goods? What examples did we give of substitute goods?
Bread and candolo.
Bread and candolo, yes. So what happens if the price of bread goes up?
You start buying candolo.
You buy more of candolo, yes. Then what did we talk about? Complementary goods. So the aspect of switching from bread to candolo is called the substitution effect. Aspect of switching from bread to candolo is called the substitution effect. Okay. So I'm trying to preempt because sometimes you're going to write a quiz in this. Okay. So for some aspects is very mumbo jumbo. There's a lot that you need to learn. So when we participate in setting some of your papers and questions, we have little power to moderate because your lecturer would want things to come in his way. So we just need to know a lot. That's why I need to have to explain a few things here and there. Complementary goods are goods which move hand in hand. All right. What examples did we look at?
Bread and butter.
Bread and butter. So what happens if the price of bread goes up? Number one, the demand for bread will go down. Consequently, the demand for butter also go down because once there's no bread, there's no need for butter. All right. They are called complementary goods. We also talked about what inferior goods. What are inferior goods? What are inferior goods?
Oh,
These are goods whose demand goes when the income of an individual goes up.
Excellent. And we call that effect what? The income effect. So these are goods whose demand will go down surprisingly when the what? The income of an individual goes up. Example? Sula, an example?
yeah.
Give me an example of an inferior good.
Sorry, you
talked
said
about-
the next.
Yes. Give me an example of an inferior good. Chileche.
Salt.
Salt. When your income goes up, you stop buying salt.
No, like you can't buy it in bulk, for example.
Or let's say the price of you stop demanding more of, let's say, the TV that you have at home, the small TV or that black and white TV, and then you want to buy a big flat screen TV. So the other TV is an inferior good.
Exactly, yeah.
Or even like when you use bundles on the phone, but if your pay goes up, you opt to use Wi-Fi. Does that make sense? No.
Okay, so you are using your income to shift. You are driving a Corolla and your income status goes up. So you be able to afford an X5. So your Corolla becomes an inferior good. All right. We also talked about, so this is called the what? The income effect. So I would want to relate this to elasticity later on. Please take note of these important terms. We also talked about Veblen goods and Giffen goods. Who remembers what are Veblen goods and inferior goods and Giffen goods? What are Giffen goods?
Mr. Collins. If I can remember, or for Veblen, is it Veblen? It's when the price of a good goes up, then the demand also goes up.
Example?
Even fuel.
Even fuel.
Yeah, because even if the price of fuel goes up, the demand still goes up. It doesn't go down.
No.
Or milli meal,
Mhm.
or even milli meal.
This could encourage. The definition is okay.
Okay.
But
The
your
examples,
examples
no.
are not okay. Who wants to help?
Okay.
Designer clothes. Art. Okay, you want to be. So let's look at these ones here. So we have the types of goods showing above there. Necessities, something that is what for basic existence, like consumption, food, water, housing, electricity. Comfort goods, a good which isn't a necessity but gives you enjoyment, such as subscription to Netflix, a takeaway. A comfort good may be a luxurious good. Complementary goods, these are goods which move or used together. TV and DVD, these are complements. Substitute goods are goods which are alternatives to each other. Coke, Pepsi, Cola, these are substitutes. Cyclonic for fresh view, these are substitutes. Different goods is a rare type of a good where an increase in price causes an increase in its demand. The reason is that the income effect of the rise in the price causes you to buy more of this cheap good because you can't afford more expensive goods. For example, the price of wheat rises, the poor may not be able to afford it anymore, so they'll buy more wheat. Okay, so given goods, we talked about potato, rice, bread. These are given goods. Veblen goods are also called snob goods. It's a good where the increase in the price attracts people to do what? To buy more of it. They think they want to be the only ones. If they buy it, they are better than the others. Call it bling in the colloquial. For instance, some designer clothes, some form of art, some paintings that doesn't make sense, which was designed by a particular individual. We also talked about public goods and merit goods. Public goods being goods produced by the federal government, like street lighting, road networking, and the merit goods being provided also by the private sector, like private clinics, private hospitals, private schools, etc. So each of these contribute to what we call elasticity. Now, elasticity is a sensitivity that is attained because of the other type of good. So we have three types of elasticity, if not four. So there's what is called price elasticity of demand, income elasticity of demand, cross price elasticity of demand. So this is what I'll look at later on in the next session. I will ask questions later on in the form of a homework, but you need to really spend time in understanding these concepts all over again. Those of you who missed the previous sessions, please get the audios and listen to them. All right. So any questions on what has been discussed so far?